Hi, and welcome to the GC MasterClass Series from ContractPod AI. I am Charles Dimov. I'm the Vice President of Global Marketing here at ContractPod. And with me today, I have Tim Snow. And Tim, would you mind introducing yourself and Inmarsat?
Hello, Charles. Yes, I'm Tim Snow. I'm Vice President for Procurement, Commercial Contracting and Insurance for Inmarsat globally. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. And again, maybe Tim, you can tell me a little bit about Inmarsat itself as well. So what does Inmarsat do exactly?
So, 24,000 miles above your head right now, Charles, are 17 very big satellites, very powerful satellites that essentially provide broadband anywhere, anytime across the world. And that enables maritime owners to keep their boats safe and in communication, airlines to provide broadband to their customers on board, Wi-Fi, governments to get their military where they need to at any point in time, and some pretty cool, clever stuff to help a whole variety of customers deliver their business better with less risk. So that's us.
The fact that we can now do things like Wi-Fi on an airplane and connect to the internet and get my email on an airplane, that's because of you guys.
That comes out of our satellites, yes. There are competitors, but we're the best.
Yeah, of course, no doubt about that. So that's great. Well, thank you guys for that, because that helps a lot, specifically when you got some urgent matters to do and you are on a flight. So now, we actually kind of got started in terms of our conversations regarding the Project Streamline. And so with Project Streamline, just for the viewers' sake, Inmarsat had applied and in fact, we co-nominated them on an award from the World Commerce and Contracting Organization. And so they were formerly called the IACCM. And most recently, we kind of went through that award process. And Project Streamline was a pretty major initiative in the legal operations and the contracting team at Streamline. Now, Tim, can you tell me a little bit about how did you get started with this project and why? Why did you even take this on?
Sure. So a number of years ago, a couple of years ago, we looked at all of our customer contracts and realized they were on very different terms, legal terms, very different commercial terms. And it became quite difficult to understand what was expiring when, what was valid, and a number of different legal entities. So we thought there's got to be a better way. We also weren't clear where we were storing our contracts and how to retrieve them, let alone find out what key clauses we had in them. So when it came to GDPR and data protection, we thought, I wonder how we can make it easier to retrieve data in the future. Hence, Project Streamline under my leadership was born.
Oh, excellent. That's great. And that's pretty good. And you know what, and you hit on a couple of really key points. It's interesting. I think a lot of companies think that, oh, well, you know what, digital transformation, that's not a big deal. I just digitize all of our contracts, bingo, away you go, you're off to the races. But it's a really good point that you make. Even if your contracts are digitized and you don't have them in a paper-based format, the challenge you still have is that some of them are going to be on, Bob's hard drive, some of them are going to be on a thumb drive, some of them are going to be on a network. They could be all over the place, and all the documents and files and stuff. So interesting point from that perspective. Now, Project Streamline, again, is a beautiful example of digital transformation done really well in a legal and a contracting team. What are some of the early benefits that you've been experiencing so far, now that you've got it up?
Absolutely. So my team and legal worked in a 50-50 partnership. So it's been a double act to implement our new contract management system, which of course you're providing for us, and it's brilliant. That allows us to see what contracts we've done are valid and what ones are coming up. So whilst I have a procurement team and a customer contract team, it doesn't matter, because both parties can see we've got X number of contracts coming up in X period of time, and we can get on the front foot with those, leveraging our scale and the timing to do really, really good deals. That's one thing. The second thing is we can make sure that we stay legal and up to date. So if there's legislation that changes, we can check our contract using the AI element of the contract management functionality to be able to see what we've got in place and what we need to change to make sure we stay legal as well. And both of those things we're doing right now at a small number of months after implementing the solution.
That is fantastic news, and a brilliant example of using AI. I think over the past year or so, I've chatted with so many different lawyers who, in fact, let me take it back about a year. At that point in time, there were a lot of concerns in the market, in fact, about saying, oh, this AI technology coming to the legal tech space, boy, it's kind of scary. There were a lot of concerns, in fact, at that time, thinking that, wow, this is going to take away my job. Is that the idea behind this? And frankly, I had a lot of conversations with folks and said, I really don't think that that's a concern. It's not about taking away your job. And in fact, it's about making your organization a lot smarter. And I think you've got a great example of that, as you just kind of mentioned, of being able to kind of watch your contracts and say, hey, here's a legislative change. What is the impact, or how many of our contracts are affected by it? So again, brilliant use of AI technology there.
And I think, Charles, the reality is, who really enjoys going through a whole load of contracts or a whole load of Excels trying to understand what clauses are in place? Well, that's not value added activity. And you're absolutely right, that does take away a little part of people's jobs, but it takes away the repeatable, boring bit of people's jobs with the AI, assuming you set it up right, of course, so that you can use the outcomes to best effect quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Good perspective. Now, what can your team do today that you think that you couldn't do about a year ago before you started Project Streamline?
Well, I can't tell our board that we've got 2,116 contracts live. I can't tell our board that we've got 182 contracts that will be expiring in 2021.
That'll be just you and I, absolutely.
And I can't then allocate those out to my team to make sure to make sure that we stay legal and valid. And I can do that now. And that's really, really powerful, let alone the granular detail that sits behind that. I can and will be able as well to look at all the different legal entities that we've got in place, although Streamline sorted much of that out, to see if there are opportunities to be more tax efficient moving forwards. So there's the staying legal aspect, there's the ensuring that we maximize our clauses aspect, and then there's the opportunity to use that information for commercial gain. Of course, fairly legal, PR positive, but nevertheless create opportunities.
That is fantastic. That's if any conversation that I've ever had with any other GCs, that is probably one of the most important aspects that I've heard so far. In fact, what you've just said is that what traditionally has been seen in either your organization or any organization as typically a cost center of saying, we've got the legal team, we've got the contracting team there. Mostly it's just a cost and what you're saying is, in fact, this is now shifting over into a value opportunity for the company, a business opportunity for the company. That is absolutely brilliant.
And it has a side benefit, an important benefit, that staff have an opportunity to use that to do more interesting work. So if we're taking away the boring, repeatable tasks that the computer can do, we use the information to do more value added. So to your point about some organizations thinking AI is a negative thing, it's not. It's a positive thing in my mind, how we've done it, and can lead to benefits in terms of staff not leaving us.
Absolutely brilliant. I love it. So tell me something else. Now, as I mentioned before, I had over the past year or 2 years, I've certainly got a very strong gist from many in the legal space. We've noticed from our research that the legal space, the contracting space, has been a little bit slow to kind of adopt new technologies. in many organizations like size to yourself, even larger organizations, they seem almost reluctant to kind of take that step and digitally transform themselves. Now, any perspective from your side or any speculation you might kind of throw out there to say, what do you think, why do you think there is that reluctance from other organizations, that is?
So maybe I'll answer your question in a different way. So
Yeah.
I was reluctant to implement this kind of thing in 2003, when I first decided to implement a solution, not with you guys and definitely not with AI, but nevertheless the principles of it, when I worked at Hutchison. And so we did implement it and the value came through. So over the last 16 years, as part of my role, I've been implementing technology like this, not as good as your product, but to maximize gain. So I suppose I'd say, this is almost like a hygiene factor now. You need to know what contracts you've got in place. You need to know what commitments you've got in place. And the modern way of doing it, the cheapest way of doing it, and the easiest way of doing it is implementing a system like this. As long as you implement it correctly and you think through that implementation carefully, of course, so you get it all right, which requires a little bit of brain power, but is time well spent. So don't worry about it, I'd say. Try it, and maybe try it on a low risk area if you're kind of worried, and then expand it out.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. If I might add also, I think it's always good to also work with a partner who's likely to be there with you. So in other words, somebody who's kind of either willing to take on some of the risk with the organization, or frankly, just making sure that they've got the right services scope to be with you every step of the way. Because I think that's an important aspect too. I recall being at one conference where I was quite shocked. In fact, one GC stood up and told his story about a bad scenario where he had been sold, on some legal automation, what he thought was a full implementation, and it turned out to be just that the vendor had sold him the software and said, well, it's not our problem, good luck, go and find a systems integrator. And then two other GCs stood up and said, yeah, I went through the same experience. And you realize that, wow, you do have to be cautious, and just make sure to ask your vendors that as well, because you do want that support and that help, and not to be left holding a bag saying, oh, this is what I bought, I didn't realize. So.
And I think, what I've learned over the years is buy an outcome, not a piece of tech. So the outcome you will want is whatever you want. In my case, understanding of contracts, ability to kind of change those contracts, etc., etc. Well, to get there, yes, you need some tech. Yes, you need it implemented properly. Yes, you need a vendor, a partner who you can work with and are culturally minded. So do your homework on that. We did reference calls in our case. We thought through the outcomes. We made sure that implementation was part of the base level of contract, kind of built in, and payment was linked to deliverables. So we knew we were going to get what we wanted. That really, really helped. If you just buy a piece of tech and then expect yourself to implement it, I personally think that's unlikely to be successful, because of course you don't do it very often. You don't know what you don't know. You need the experience.
Yes, absolutely. Good advice on that side. Now, let's kind of change the channel a little bit and kind of switch our thinking to a little bit more internally, which is when you were taking on the digital transformation project at Inmarsat, or maybe even your previous company as well, what were some of the important points that you kept communicating to senior executives? So that's a really important aspect. And I realize some people will say, oh, that's just politics, but you know what? It's really important. And how do you get a project like this through? So communicating with senior executives to make sure that they're well informed and they know what's going on, and that they're supportive. So what did you do in your case? Anything that you would say, this was really important?
Okay, so I suppose, first off, I made very clear to the board that this is merely part of a wider transformation with wider value. So this is a hygiene factor for me, getting the basics right, a tool implemented with a load of outcomes that fitted into a bigger picture with some value, return on investment that kind of came out of that. That's the first thing. Second thing, I painted a picture of all the things we don't know by not having this and what the impact might be from a risk perspective, so they could understand that, yeah? And then I painted the picture of how we'll solve that, and the upside value, like some of the examples I gave earlier, could flow out of that as well. So actually, I think it ended up being 20-minute presentation on the bigger picture and maybe a 5-minute side conversation, and off we go, because it became so compelling why we would do that.
Amazing. Wow, that is absolutely amazing. And in fact, because I think there's often a perception out in the market that, well, you know what, for me to take this up to the senior leadership team, the SLT is probably going to be reluctant on this thing. They're not going to want to spend money, etc. But by framing it the way you did, which is basically saying, here's the problem, this is where we're at, and then saying, here are the risks if we don't go into this. These are some of the potential scenarios. And then saying, here's how you do it. That actually sounds like it really worked, and it was pretty straightforward. That's
and I
amazing.
think probably two other things, sorry to interrupt you, Charles, two other things made the difference. Working in partnership with my legal colleague. So we do a double act on most things. Why wouldn't we do a double act on this implementation as well? And that partnership, which is really strong in the company, we use to good gain here. And secondly, I am actually part of the senior leadership, as is my legal colleague. So it made it a little bit easier to have a senior leader sponsoring this, so that the board would understand the importance of it. That's something which I think over the years I've learned you need to kind of really put it forward yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Driving it from the top is definitely makes the whole job a lot easier. Absolutely. So now that the project is a success, it's on its feet, it's successful, you've got a couple of successes under your belt, which is great. What are you monitoring really carefully? Because again, you want to make sure that it continues to be that success, and monitoring is an important aspect.
So I guess there's a couple of things there. The reporting and analytics functionality that's in the tool, we set up some standard reports which give us pertinent information that allows us to take action and deliver value. And then we allocate, so if there's a number of contracts coming up for renewal, we allocate them to people to actually do something with using the reporting and analytics. And indeed, because of the pinging functionality, John Smith gets a ping from the system to remind him, or Philippa in some of the other cases, remind them that there's a contract coming up for renewal. So we're using the tool like it was originally intended, I think. But again, that all comes up to how you set it up. So if you set it up right, working in partnership with you to bring best practice to setting up, you can set it up right and get the value out of it. If you just leave it as a system, you won't. That's the first thing. And the second thing is we've allocated an owner within the organization who is responsible for continuous improvement in the system, who is also the super user of the system, and we've hardwired improvements into her objectives so that she's accountable for keeping this system live, up to date, and usable and relevant. So that hopefully will set this up for ongoing success.
Those are some really key learnings. That is excellent. Thank you for that insight, for sure. Now, tell me, any particularly critical KPIs that come to your mind for the project?
Accurate information. So poor information in, poor information out. So one of the KPIs was reviewing our aged contracts we thought we knew about, the ones which were no longer going to be renewed, or customers we were going to work with, or procurement contracts that were no longer needed, we didn't transfer into the system. And we did that on purpose to make sure it was relevant contracts. So we didn't have a database of many thousands and wasted effort on the transfer in. I think that's quite powerful.
Yes. Interesting. Very, very good. Now that you're up and operating and running, how do you feel about the outcomes of Project Streamline? I'm sure it's pretty positive, but still, what do you feel about the outcomes?
So I'm very proud of the outcomes, and I'm very proud of the joint legal and commercial contracts team's work to get it set up. to tweak it and then use the information. Super proud of that. It's just what I was hoping for and just what I've seen work in other organizations. I'm really proud to be nominated for an award, not me personally, but the team, of course, for the work that we'd done. And actually, it didn't really matter to me whether we won or not. Just the nomination was kudos to the team and all the good work that they've done. So incredibly proud of that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing and continuing to see the value come out of the system by how we use it. So it's good, great teamwork. Great work by some individuals, and we're set for success now.
That's fantastic. And Tim, I always end off my these presentations by asking a very similar question, which is, now there are many GCs out there. There are many heads of legal operations, heads of legal contracting, who are thinking about getting into this digital transformation journey of their own, whether it's on a CLM or whether it's a legal automation of some sort or matter management, whatever it might be. And in your opinion, what advice would you have for them in terms of how should they get started? Yeah, what advice, if you're about to talk to a GC, what would you tell them? Here's what I advise.
So I would ask yourself kind of a few key questions. Do I understand where all my contracts are? Do I understand what are included in those contracts? Do I think there's opportunities for commercial gain? Do I worry about certain risks? And then ask yourself how you would get there if there aren't now, but there might be in the future, or if there aren't now. How would you get the information? How would you avoid burdening your solicitors with a whole load of admin work? And that probably will draw you to a conclusion that for a small investment in an integrated system with some really cool outcomes, you could answer all of those questions cheaply and easily and avoid your staff becoming demotivated by those transactional tasks. So secondly, I'd encourage those people, just pick up the phone to reference customers who have done it before. You're not on your own. You're not the first that's implemented this, and you won't be the last. And I'm very happy to have any of those call myself, but there are lots of others who would too. And you'll see that it's not easy implementing the system in that you need to think what you want the outcomes to be, but that's homework you can do. And then pick a partner who is akin to your culture and has a similar mindset, and is really keen to implement a quality solution. So I can't imagine in-house counsel particularly not doing this. It doesn't make sense to me in this modern age where data and access to data in a timely fashion is so important.
Yeah, that is a really, really key point to leave off on. And so that is absolutely amazing. So in other words, do your homework ahead of time. Secondly would be, talk to some folks, go out and speak to some customers who have done it before, and then pick a partner intelligently. Do your due diligence in fact, and just sort of look for a partner who's actually going to be there with you on that journey to help you out. So again, really 3 good key points. Tim, thank you so much for your time. This has been an absolutely fascinating conversation, and congratulations so much to your team and to yourself also included for doing that digital transformation project for Project Streamline within Inmarsat. I think it was a tremendous success. And as you point out, the very fact that you guys were nominated for different awards and stuff is telling in itself, which is great. So again, thank you so much for your time. And again, this wraps up another one of the sessions of the GC MasterClass Series with Tim Snow from Inmarsat.